This is another edition of Tech on Ice. I apologize, this is going to be a rant. Well, not a rant. I like to call them musings. It's not top of mind, but it's something that I see a lot of discussion online about and whatever. So I thought I'd give my 2 cents to the two people that are watching. Let's talk about tech jobs, tech market, tech hiring, what have you. Because it's weird right now. Like I've been in this space for 15 years. Been in tech. I've worked at companies that tech adjacent, like insurance companies and marketing companies and stuff like that. I worked in consulting, worked in big tech, worked in small big tech. And the tech industry is very strange at the moment. And I think part of the reason is twofold. I think one, we're in this weird shift between employees starting to understand what their value is and companies recognizing that and doubling down on wanting to control cost as much as possible. And I don't know if this is economic related or what. I'm not an economist. I'm not in finance. I'm not in HR. So these are all just opinions and thoughts. Just wanted to make that clear. So let's take a step back a few years ago. When the pandemic happened, a lot of companies recognized, oh, we still need to innovate. There's all this demand for our services. Depending on what industries you are, it's substantially more than others. And I'll just take big tech for an example. People need to use like cloud-based software substantially more. And we need people to build that cloud-based software and add features to it and all that stuff. So we need to convince people to leave their existing situation. So we need to give them more money and more options and all these sort of things. So rates and compensation like skyrocketed during the pandemic. And then now that we're post-pandemic, you're seeing an interesting shift, right? It's shrinking. Like if you talk to somebody who was hired at a tech company 3 years ago versus right now, like the wages are different. I can tell you firsthand, like the wages are different. But also it's just interesting because we have this situation where tech companies are also trying to control their costs as much as possible. Like you're seeing things like return to office. You're seeing things like some companies are not paying like inflation raises. You know how if you work at a company, you'll get like a 2% raise, and it's an inflation raise to kind of match the rate of inflation. So you're seeing companies do that, and I can only speak for somebody who has been in tech and been looking for work in tech over the last 4 years, and the conversations with hiring managers are substantially different now. Like I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's a hiring manager, and like HR and finance are basically running the show in a lot of places, to the extent of, oh, this person, they'd be a great candidate, they'd be a great option, but we can't even interview them because they haven't worked at a company, their previous company, long enough. Like, and they're considered what we like to call flight risk, right? They come in, they take a better wage, they take a compensation package, whatever, and then they leave after a year, 18 months. So there's like a loyalty expectation, right? Which is fine. I mean, at the end of the day, a company's going to do whatever it can to minimize risk, right? And you see that with the return to office as well, like minimizing risk. But it's interesting to me that, especially as we get into this world where everything is like AI specific too, like there's a hyper focus on AI, that a lot of the roles that are opening up have an AI lean to them. So like if you're not in the space where you can directly contribute in the AI space, you're definitely not going to meet the compensation expectations that were around during the pandemic. And I just find it pretty fascinating. Like we're in this world where all these companies are making tons of money. Like that's not to be, it's definitely, that's a 100% reality. Like you look at any balance sheet, you look at earnings calls of these publicly traded companies, they're making lots of money. But then do you see employee sentiment, and so employee sentiment is like way down because wages aren't as good, compensation isn't as good, hyper focus on AI, return to office, what have you, right? These are all things that are very strange. And it'll be interesting to see over the next 18 months, like where we end up. Like, are we going to go back basically to exactly what it was like pre-pandemic, where everybody works in an office, everybody, makes decent wages, but not like the super inflated wages from the pandemic? Is everything are companies going to be less risk averse, or are they going to be more risk averse because of AI and the impact that it has on things? Um, and all this kind of depends on, like, at least in the U.S., like what the economic situation is in 18 months. Like, we have no idea, right? Um, but it's interesting. Like, I mean, I was speaking to somebody who is younger than me and has like 4 years of experience, and they recently realized they didn't want to work at the company they were at anymore, and they were nervous about, like, I don't even want to go out there and look for jobs. I hear it's so bad. And you know, if people that are senior at my level and people that are junior at this person's level, if we're both worried about the current job market, I think there's something to be said about, like, there's something wrong with the job market, right? Well, anyway, that's a rant slash musing. Um, Hopefully you folks stick along with it. I did a little bit of rambling, so I apologize. But if you liked me and a cold plunge talking about this sort of stuff, feel free to like, subscribe, and share with your friends and colleagues. Also, let me know in the comments if there's topics you want me to rant or muse about, or maybe you want to learn something from me for once, and I can do that as well. But anyway, this has been an episode of Tech on Ice, where I talk about hiring in tech in 50 degrees water. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.